Imagine you are standing in line at a small neighborhood bank on a quiet afternoon, just waiting for your turn to deposit a check or withdraw a little cash. Nothing unusual, everything calm and ordinary, when suddenly the doors swing open with a loud crash and two masked figures rush inside, one waving a pistol that looks old but still terrifying, the other carrying a large duffel bag, and in that instant the entire mood of the room shifts from mundane to panic. People scream. Mothers clutch their children, older folks duck behind counters, and everyone instinctively drops low to the ground, terrified of what might happen next. The robbers shout orders demanding wallets and jewelry, while one jumps onto a counter to show he means business. Fear spreads like wildfire, and the air grows heavy with dread. Yet in the middle of this charged atmosphere, one voice rises above all others, loud, shrill, and commanding. A voice nobody expected at such a moment, and that voice belongs to none other than HOA Karen, the self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood, the woman who polices lawns for uncut grass, complains about garbage bins left out an extra hour, and files reports if your mailbox paint looks faded, and instead of cowering like the rest of the people, she stands tall with her arms crossed and shouts, "Excuse me! This is completely unacceptable behavior! This is a community bank and you have no right to barge in like this!" The robbers pause, shocked at her audacity, and for a split second they actually wonder if she's serious. But Karen, fueled by years of meddling and a sense of self-righteous authority, doubles down, continuing to scold them as if they were teenagers caught skateboarding on private property, her lecture echoing through the bank lobby, telling them about how hardworking citizens use this bank and how crime is against HOA regulations, her voice so piercing that even people hiding under desks peek out to see what insanity is unfolding. And the robbers, instead of maintaining control, start bickering with her, one yelling, "Lady, shut up!" while the other nervously looks toward the windows because the noise is bound to draw attention from outside. But Karen is unstoppable, waving her hands and pointing fingers as if she were in a board meeting, insisting they follow rules and respect the neighborhood. And at this point, the surreal scene begins to unfold where customers, though scared, start whispering to each other in disbelief, some even covering their mouths to keep from laughing, because only Karen would think to lecture armed criminals in the middle of a heist. But this strange defiance actually disrupts the robbers' rhythm. They keep telling her to shut up, but she keeps getting louder, grabbing a chair and dragging it across the floor just to make more noise, slamming her handbag onto the counter and declaring that she is not afraid. Meanwhile, the commotion outside grows because pedestrians passing by hear her shouting and stop to see what's going on. A small crowd begins to gather at the windows, pulling out phones and calling the police. And while Karen has no idea what, she's triggered. Her sheer stubbornness is buying precious time. The robbers argue among themselves about whether to tie her up or knock her out. But before they can act, she takes another bold step, walking right toward them, wagging her finger in their faces and complaining about how they're scratching the bank's floor with their boots. A ridiculous complaint in such a dangerous moment, but exactly what makes it so bizarre and unforgettable. And now the tension in the room shifts again. People realize that Karen's insane bravery or foolishness is distracting the robbers enough that nobody else is being harmed. And one brave teller quietly crawls to the back to hit the silent alarm, summoning law enforcement, while Karen keeps everyone's attention on her, unknowingly becoming both the problem and the solution, her voice filling every corner of the bank, her confidence unshaken. And in that moment, the stage is perfectly set for chaos that only HOA Karen can create. The noise inside the bank reached a level no one could have predicted, and by now the robbers were losing their grip on the situation. Their original plan to rush in, grab the cash, and disappear had been completely derailed by the relentless presence of HOA Karen, who simply would not back down, her voice like a siren that refused to stop, echoing off the marble floors and glass walls, making the chaos spread not just inside but also outside, where bystanders gathered, holding up phones to record what looked more like a comedy skit than a dangerous robbery. And the robbers, realizing they were attracting too much attention, grew increasingly desperate, shouting louder commands that nobody followed because Karen was drowning them out, telling them about zoning violations, threatening to report them to the city, and even complaining about how one of their masks was not properly fitted, which, she claimed, violated safety regulations, leaving everyone in stunned disbelief at how absurd this all sounded. Yet somehow it was working because the robbers were completely distracted, arguing back with her instead of keeping control of the hostages. And then came the turning point when Karen, in a sudden burst of action, picked up her oversized purse, which weighed a ton because she carried everything from notebooks to hairspray to cans of soda inside, and she swung it with surprising force at the duffel bag the robber was holding, causing him to stumble, his grip loosening, the bag falling to the floor, spilling out rope, duct tape, and a few stolen wallets they had already snatched, and the sight of their loot hitting the ground made the crowd of customers gasp. But before the robber could recover, Karen screamed, "Not in my neighborhood!" and shoved him back against the counter, which made the second robber panic, waving his pistol around in frustration. But that only escalated Karen's fury. She marched toward him and began berating him for pointing weapons at innocent people, her tone so sharp that even the children hiding with their parents peeked out in disbelief, as if watching some bizarre superhero showdown. And at that exact moment, the wail of police sirens grew louder, filling the street outside, flashing red and blue lights bouncing off the bank's glass entrance, and the robbers froze, realizing their time was up. Yet even then, Karen would not stop. She planted herself right in front of the doors, declaring that nobody was leaving until she gave permission, as if she were the one in charge, her stance bold and ridiculous, yet somehow intimidating. And when the police stormed in shouting commands, they found the robbers already half defeated, one pinned in place by Karen's constant pushing, and the other looking exhausted from arguing with her. And without much resistance, both were forced to the ground and cuffed, ending what should have been a terrifying ordeal, but instead felt like a surreal comedy thanks to Karen's involvement. And when the officers asked who had caused the disturbance, the crowd of customers all pointed at Karen, half grateful, half exasperated. And the officers gave her a puzzled look as she stood proudly with her chin up, saying, "You're welcome. I saved the neighborhood again." Even though, in truth, the police would have handled it quicker without her noise, yet somehow her relentless behavior had bought everyone time and prevented real harm. And as the robbers were dragged out to the waiting patrol cars, Karen turned to the shaken but safe customers and launched into yet another speech about how important it was to follow community rules, how crime was unacceptable under her watch, and how people should always remain vigilant, while the rest of the crowd just rolled their eyes, whispering to each other that only Karen could turn a bank robbery into a stage for her own drama. And as the news crews arrived, shoving cameras through the door to capture the aftermath, Karen jumped at the opportunity to tell her version of events, exaggerating her heroism, claiming she stared down the gunman with pure courage, that she single-handedly protected every citizen inside, and though the reporters nodded politely, anyone who had actually been there knew the truth. She had been reckless, loud, and insufferable, but at the same time bizarrely effective, and as the sun set and the bank staff began cleaning up the mess, people left shaking their heads, muttering about how Karen's interference always created chaos, yet deep down they admitted she had, in her own unorthodox way, helped stop the robbers. And later that evening, when neighbors gathered around dinner tables to talk about the day's events, the story spread like wildfire, turning into a local legend. Some calling her a hero, others calling her a menace, but all agreeing on one thing. If you ever find yourself in trouble in that neighborhood, don't be surprised if the loudest voice in the room, the one drowning out logic and sense, belongs to none other than HOA Karen, the woman who somehow turned a dangerous bank robbery into yet another showcase of her outrageous personality.